The night Eloise Beaulieu finally understood the full shape of her marriage, she was standing in the lobby of the Viridian Health Group Winter Gala holding 2 glasses of champagne, one for herself, one for Jordan, watching her husband laugh at something Chantal Rourke had just said. Not the polite laugh he saved for work functions, the real one. The one she hadn't heard him aim at her in a very long time. She had taken a taxi from their condo in Liberty Village, because Jordan said he'd be stuck in afternoon meetings and couldn't pick her up. She'd worn the slate gray dress he mentioned once that he liked. She'd been 20 minutes early because she was nervous. The good kind of nervous. The kind that comes when you think tonight might matter. When you think maybe your husband finally inviting you to his company. Gala after years of gentle excuses means something is shifting between you. She understood now what was shifting. The room was full of Viridian people she'd never met, because Jordan had never introduced her to anyone he worked with. She recognized a few faces from the company website she'd studied in the taxi, wanting to be prepared. Jordan's parents, Hugh and Dorothy Kemp, were somewhere in the room. She spotted Dorothy near the dessert table before Jordan spotted Eloise. When he did see her, his expression didn't warm, it tightened. "You're early," he said, walking over with Chantal still beside him, her hand close to his arm in a way that wasn't quite touching but was unmistakably rehearsed. "You said 7, Eloise heard how her own voice sounded, careful, already bracing. "It's 7:10. I thought you might be tired, you've been working late." It was the gentlest way he'd ever told her she wasn't supposed to be somewhere. Chantal Rourke smiled at her. Not a cruel smile exactly, just the particular smile of someone who knows how a story ends and is being patient about it. "You must be Jordan's wife, he's mentioned you." Eloise looked at her husband, his jaw was set. Around them a few nearby conversations had quieted just enough to feel deliberate. "How long?" she asked. Jordan didn't pretend not to understand. Eloise. "How long, Jordan?" He glanced at Chantal, then back at his wife. "A year and a half." "A year and a half." Eloise held both champagne glasses until she became aware that her fingers were shaking, then set them down on a nearby table very carefully, the way you set down something that cost more than it was worth. She looked around the room at the careful arrangement of eye contact being avoided. Hugh Kemp, Jordan's father, was staring at his phone. Dorothy had found something important to discuss with a woman in a red blazer. They knew they had known and they were here and they had said nothing. "You invited me tonight," Eloise said quietly. "You specifically asked me to come." Jordan's expression shifted into something she could only call inconvenience. "I was going to tell you, I wanted to do it in a neutral space." "This is neutral." "It's public, less likely to," he stopped. Less likely to what? Less likely for her to fall apart. She looked at Chantal again, this woman who worked in his building, who had been part of his daily life while Eloise sat in their home office with her headset on, and her second monitor running code and their whole quiet life held in place by routines. He didn't notice she maintained. "He's filing for divorce on Monday," Chantal said, not viciously, just as a fact, the way you announce things when you've been waiting to announce them. Eloise nodded once slowly. "Okay," she said. Jordan blinked. "Okay? File the papers, I'll sign them." She picked up one of the champagne glasses, finished it in a single calm swallow, set it back down, and walked to the coat check. Dorothy caught her arm near the door. "Eloise, I'm so sorry, we didn't know how to." "You've had a year and a half, Dorothy." Eloise retrieved her coat without waiting for the rest of the sentence. In the taxi home she called her lawyer. "It's Eloise," she said. "Proceed with the board appointment. I'll take my seat at the February meeting." "Are you certain?" "Once the announcement goes through Viridian's official channels." "I'm certain, and get me the divorce paperwork the moment Jordan files. I want to sign it the same day." She hung up and watched the city slide past the window. CN Tower blinked in the distance. It had been a mild January for Toronto, the kind of winter that felt like it was holding something back. So was she. Jordan filed on a Thursday. The papers were thick, thorough. His lawyer had done careful work on the asset disclosures, Jordan's salary, his investment portfolio, his pension contributions. On Eloise's side, the document listed, freelance healthcare consulting, estimated income variable, no major assets disclosed. He thought she made a comfortable living. He wasn't wrong technically. He had just badly misunderstood what comfortable living meant. When they first met, she had been an ER nurse at Toronto Western. Jordan had been brought in after a cycling accident. Nothing serious, a torn ligament, 2 cracked ribs, a lot of dramatic suffering. She'd been kind to him because she was kind to everyone, and he'd interpreted it as something particular to him, which she'd found charming at the time. She meant to tell him about Medlens from the beginning. The idea had come in her third year of nursing. She'd watched too many patients deteriorate overnight because the monitoring systems hospitals used were reactive. They flagged problems after they happened, not before. She'd started sketching an algorithm on her lunch breaks. Predictive vital monitoring. A system that caught the pattern before the crisis. She taught herself to code using online courses, then better ones, then 2 years of evening classes at Ryerson while working full nursing shifts. Jordan thought she was doing continuing education for her professional certification. She let him think that, because she had watched early in their marriage, what happened when she outperformed him at anything. It wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. A pulled silence over dinner. A comment about her not understanding real business pressure. A way of steering conversations about money back toward his salary, his raises, his promotion changes at Viridian. She had learned the shape of his ego the way you learn the shape of furniture in the dark, by moving around it without ever naming it. So when Medlens grew from a side project into a company with 3 developers and a clinical trial partnership with St. Michael's Hospital, she kept it separate. When the revenue started coming in, real revenue, the kind that surprised even her own accountant, she kept separate accounts Jordan didn't know existed. When Viridian Health Group came to her acquisition council with a formal offer for Medlens Technologies, she said yes. $580 million, paid to her holding company in stages. She had been sitting in their kitchen eating toast when the final transfer confirmed. Jordan had been in the shower. She'd finished the toast. That was 8 months before the gala. The divorce papers landed on a Monday. By Monday afternoon, Eloise had signed every page and sent them back by Kurt. She didn't contest the condo. She didn't ask for the car. She agreed to a modest settlement payout that she would never collect because she didn't need it and didn't want to spend another moment attached to Jordan Kemp's finances. He called that evening. You signed them already. He sounded off balance like he'd prepared for a negotiation. You wanted a divorce, Jordan, I gave you one. I expected you to have questions. I don't have questions. A pause. Then with genuine bewilderment, where are you going to go? You don't have. I'm fine, she said. Goodbye, Jordan. She moved into a furnished condo on King Street West that week. Her assistant had booked it. It had floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the lake and cost more per month than their old condo's mortgage. She stood at the window the first evening with a mug of tea and felt, for the first time in a very long time, like she was breathing at her actual size. 2 weeks later, Viridian Health Group filed updated board composition documents with the Ontario Securities Commission. The new member listed was Eloise Beaulieu, representing Medlens Technologies, effective February 1st. Jordan's name was nowhere near the filing. He was a VP of strategy 3 levels below the board. He had no reason to read securities filings for his own company, neither did his parents, neither did Chantal. The February all-hands meeting was held in Viridian's main auditorium on Bay Street. 400 employees. Quarterly updates, recognition awards, department presentations, and this quarter an introduction of the 2 newest members of the board of directors. Eloise arrived early. She stood in the green room with the CEO, a steady woman named Frances Okafor, who had known about the Medlens acquisition from the beginning and had specifically requested that Eloise's board seat remain quiet until Eloise was ready. Frances hadn't asked why. She'd understood instinctively that there was a why, and that it was private. Ready? Frances asked. Yes, Eloise said. She was wearing a deep burgundy blazer over black trousers. Her hair was pulled back simply. She looked like exactly what she was. A woman who had built something real and was about to be introduced as such. From the side of the stage she found Jordan in the 3rd row without difficulty. He was leaning over to say something to a colleague, relaxed, unhurried, he had no idea. His parents were there too, Hugh in operations, Dorothy in clinical administration, both with assigned seats near the center of the room. Chantal Rourke was 2 rows behind Jordan on her phone. Frances stepped to the podium, quarterly results, strategic recognition awards, then, I'd like to take a moment to introduce 2 new board members who will be formally joining us this term. First, representing Medlens Technologies, the predictive monitoring platform now integrated into 14 of our partner hospitals. Please welcome Eloise Beaulieu. Eloise walked onto the stage. The silence was immediate and absolute in the way silence only gets when 400 people all stop at once. She found Jordan's face in the 3rd row. His expression moved through several stages in under 4 seconds. Confusion, recognition, then something she could only describe as the floor dropping out from under him. She stepped to the microphone. Good morning, she said. My name is Eloise Beaulieu, and I'm the founder of MedLens Technologies. Many of you may not know that the MedLens acquisition, which closed last June, was negotiated through a private holding company, which is why my name hasn't been public until today. I'm looking forward to working with all of you." She stepped back, clean simple. The rest of the introductions happened around the low static of 400 people quietly recalibrating. Jordan found her in the hallway afterward. She'd expected it. She'd asked building security to give her 10 minutes before allowing general post-meeting flow through the corridor. Visible, professional, not a place for screaming. "You built MedLens," he said. He looked hollowed out. "Yes." "The monitoring system, the one Dad said Viridian paid." He stopped. $500 million roughly, yes. He put his hand on the wall like he needed it. "You had that money the whole time we were married." "I had that company the whole time we were married," she said. "The money came later." "Eloise," he looked up at her, "why didn't you tell me?" She had thought about how she would answer this. Not as a performance, just because it was a real question and it deserved a real answer. "Because when I started making money from my work, you told your mother it was a hobby, not meanly. Just the way you say things you've decided not to examine." She kept her voice level. "I watched you spend years building your identity around being the one who understood business, who handled the real pressure. I genuinely knew, Jordan, that if you found out, it wouldn't make you proud of me. It would make you uncomfortable. And I was more interested in protecting what I'd built than in managing your discomfort." He was quiet for a moment. "And now?" "Now there's nothing left to protect from you. We're divorced. I have my board seat. Your job is entirely safe as long as you do it well, because I don't manage individual employees." "What about Chantal?" Eloise tilted her head slightly. "What about her?" "Her promotions are being reviewed. HR called her in last week. She thinks you." "Chantal's promotions are being reviewed because our governance team found 2 active misconduct complaints that were dismissed without proper investigation. Both filed before either of her promotion cycles. That has nothing to do with me personally. That's standard audit procedure following any acquisition." Jordan's jaw moved. "My parents have been asked to recuse themselves from all departmental reviews involving employees they have personal relationships with. Standard conflict of interest protocol." She paused. "Did you know your father sent your mother 3 emails about Chantal in 2022? Asking her to look out for her? Using his company address?" Jordan didn't answer. "Those emails are part of the governance record now." Her voice stayed entirely neutral. "I didn't put them there, Jordan. He wrote them on his own." She watched it move through his face. The understanding that the trouble his family was in wasn't something she had manufactured. They had made every choice themselves, and the choices had simply been documented and found. "Was any of this about hurting me?" He sounded like he genuinely wanted to know. "No," she said. "Taking my board seat was about honoring the acquisition agreement I was legally to. The governance audit was standard practice. The results are the results." She looked at him steadily. "You hurt me at that gala, Jordan. You invited me there to end our marriage in public because you wanted an audience and a controlled setting. That was cruel. But I didn't build MedLens to punish you. And I didn't take this board seat to destroy you. I built it because it mattered. I took my seat because I earned it." He looked like he might say something else. Instead he nodded once, and walked back toward the auditorium doors. In the weeks that followed, the governance audit completed its work. Chantal Rourke's second promotion was rescinded pending the outcome of the 2 complaints being properly investigated for the first time. The women who had originally filed those complaints, both of whom had left Viridian within 6 months of doing so, were contacted and offered the opportunity to have their cases heard. One declined, one did not. Hugh Kemp was removed from all hiring committees. Dorothy stepped down from her position on the Regional Clinical Advisory Board, which she'd held for 9 years. Both retained their jobs. Both had genuine long-tenured records that the audit acknowledged clearly. The governance report was measured and precise. The violations were real, and so was the prior good work. Consequences were proportionate. Chantal ended her relationship with Jordan within a month of the audit results. Eloise heard this secondhand, through a mutual connection she hadn't known existed until after the divorce. She didn't seek out further details. Chantal had made her choices and was living with them. That was sufficient. Jordan sent her a message in March, not a call, a message which she appreciated because it gave her time to decide whether to respond. "I've been thinking about what you said in the hallway. About knowing I wouldn't be proud of you. I want to say that's not fair. That I would have been proud. But I keep thinking about conversations I had with my mother about your work. the way I talked about it, and I don't know when I became someone who talked about his wife that way. I'm sorry. Not just for the things that ended the marriage, for who I was while it was happening." She read it twice, then she replied, "Thank you, that took something to write. I hope you figure out who you want to be." She didn't write again after that. The conversation was finished. The woman Eloise had been at the beginning of that marriage was someone she mourned. Exactly. That woman had been careful and quiet and genuinely good at making herself small in the spaces where smallness was expected. She had been generous in ways that had never been noticed and competent in ways she'd been asked not to advertise. She had spent 4 years of her marriage building a company that was changing patient outcomes in hospitals across the country. And she had done it in a home office with the door half closed, because she didn't want to bother Jordan when he was decompressing after work. She didn't hate that woman, she understood her, but she was done being her. In May she spoke at a Women in Health Technology conference in Vancouver. The talk was about the predictive monitoring work, technically, but it kept drifting into something else. About the years of working quietly, about why women in innovation so often become invisible to the people nearest to them, about the cost of that invisibility and what it takes to walk out of it. She received more response from that talk than from any clinical paper she'd ever published. A man named Marco Pellerin found her afterward in the reception area. He was the CFO of a medical devices firm in Ottawa and had been in the audience. He was direct without being aggressive, which she appreciated immediately. He asked about the monitoring algorithm. She explained it for 20 minutes. He didn't once look like he was waiting for her to finish. They had dinner that evening. Then another dinner 2 weeks later in Toronto. She told him about MedLens on the second date. All of it, the holding company, the acquisition, the board seat, the marriage, the gala. She watched for the recalibration she'd seen in men's faces when the number registered. The small shift in posture, the performance of being impressed. Marco just nodded. "That's an extraordinary thing to have built from a clinical observation." "It is," she said simply. He smiled. "You're allowed to agree with that, you know." She laughed, a real one, unpracticed. "I'm still learning." 18 months after the gala, Eloise sold her Viridian board stake as part of a planned secondary offering her legal team had been structuring since the acquisition. The return was significant. It would fund her new venture, a consultancy focused on ethics and governance in health technology companies. Organizations with complicated cultures and complicated people called her. She went in, found the truth, recommended changes, and left them in better shape than she'd found them. Hugh and Dorothy Kemp retired from Viridian the following spring. She received a brief formal note from Dorothy thanking her for how the retirement packages had been calculated, according to their full tenure without reduction. She didn't reply. The packages were fair. That was all they were meant to be. She did not think about Jordan Kemp often. When she did, she felt something close to compassion. He had been handed a version of her that fit neatly into his understanding of how the world worked. The nurse wife with her quiet project and her flexible schedule. And he had never once wondered if the picture was incomplete. That was his poverty, not her failure. She thought sometimes about the woman in the gala lobby, holding 2 glasses of champagne, watching her husband laugh. About how close she had come to setting those glasses down and going home and saying nothing. About how the whole shape of her life had hinged on a calm she had found, in that moment, she actually possessed. She had not known she was capable of that kind of stillness until she needed it. On a Thursday evening in late September, she sat with Marco on the back deck of the house. They were renting for a week on Prince Edward Island, both of them with books they weren't really reading, watching the light change over the water. The air smelled like salt and cut grass and something she couldn't quite name. The particular smell of a place that has nothing to do with any story you brought into it. "What are you thinking about?" Marco asked. "Nothing specific," she said. Which was the truth. For the first time in a very long time, she was thinking about nothing that needed managing, nothing that needed protecting, nothing that needed to stay hidden from anyone. She had built something extraordinary from a question. She'd asked herself in a hospital hallway at 2 in the morning. She had protected it long enough for it to matter. She had lost a marriage she thought she was holding together, and found herself in the space that opened up when it was gone. The water was gray and gold in the low autumn light, and she was exactly where she was supposed to be, and she had stopped being anything other than that a long time ago. She just hadn't known it yet.